Okay, so I will start with the antitrust compliance policy. Even though I don't see new companies today or new participants, James had already joined the first call, so we are okay with that. So let's go into the next slide. Okay, so if you remember, I will do a small recap, what I presented back in February and what I presented as well during the Boston meeting, where many of you were not there, were not in person, was how do we continue with the work we are delivering, and how do we draft a new strategy. So the first thing that I want to correct is that, and change, is that when I spoke in February and in Boston, we were speaking about 5 years strategy, and we have reduced to 3 years strategy. And there is a reason for that. It's a reason that directly related with the funding and the budget we may have for the 3 coming years. So this is going to be explained and detailed in the last point, but the main reason to reduce the strategy to 3 years is because of the budget. The second thing that I wanted to also to highlight today is that our strategy is not like ending or finishing. We not pretend broken or stopping, so we are not stopping doing anything and starting a new strategy. This is a continuous thing, but it's the way that we can measure progress and the way that things evolve. Especially in Squid, we have seen that over the last 10 years, there have been many changes, many information, the fleets are moving, regulations are coming. So it's just to be sure that we are working accurately with the tools we have, the requirements we have, and the needs that companies have. So that's the second reason to adjust to the 3 years strategy. In parallel of the SR strategy, well, SFP, the SR belongs to SFP. SFP is also in the process of launching and defining as well our own strategy as an organization called All Hands on Deck. So I will share with you, which is already public in our website. I will share with you the link along with the notes of this meeting. But basically, what SFP is also continuing with this strategy that we have in the past, really focusing on collaborative management and long-term collaboration. Okay, so we believe that it's important, it's essential to have strategies in the long term, especially in this sector, in fisheries sector, in the seafood sector, because the management strategies needs to be oversight over time. We have examples of fisheries that has been certified under conditions, for example, in the north of Europe, that after 5 years of certification, they are still not sustainable, or they have shown indicators of being downgraded. So we believe that the private engagement and the markets and the industry engagement is key to continue in the long term. We are not saying that certifications are not important or time-bound projects like FIPS are not important, because these are incentives to work towards a goal, but we want also to make understand industry in general that there will be always challenges that are arising, and you know as companies better than me that when something has been apparently solved, there is another issue that is arising. The other reason as well is that there is a big difference between the global north and the global south. So in developing countries, there is no this funding, or there is no this governance to be sure that fisheries can be well managed. And sometimes we need this support from the private sector that can bring this support, for example, in terms of data collection. No, if I want to do a stock assessment in a country where there is no data collection of service programs because there is no funding for this, the private sector can contribute, or the fishing industry has demonstrated to be a good contributor in terms of data. So these are some examples of the new SFP strategy that that you can check into our website, and probably in the coming year, during this year 2026, we will be disclosing and launching more in detail. But just for you to know that we are integrated into this dynamic, and the strategy of the SR is obviously tailored to the challenges of the Squid sector. So for that, what we have identified as the expected outcomes for our responsible Squid sector is something that is not different from other sectors in seafood, no, like tuna. But there are sectors that are much more advanced, or there are sectors that are really operating in specific regions or geographies, or when we are talking about commodities, or we are talking about products, or we are talking about fisheries. So what we believe that the Squid sector should be considered from fisheries to industry, including the value chains. And we really believe that what is needed today is a stronger regulatory and scientific foundation for squid fisheries. We still have fisheries that are unregulated, that lack of management, that there is some reporting happening, even within economic exclusive zones. So this is the foundation, no? This is what we would like to see. So this is an expected outcome for our responsible squid sector, but this is not going to be solved for sure in 2028. So these are the expected outcomes, what we believe that should be happening in this sector to really become consider that you have responsible activities and value chains are. So the strategy is towards these outcomes that I'm putting here. Standardized traceability systems for fleets and supply chains that support the harmonization of global import schemes. So today, it's true that traceability is something that SFP, or in particular in the Squid SR, we were not speaking about in detail in the past years ago. For example, when we started talking about FIPS 10 years ago, we never really spoke a lot about traceability, while it's essential. And now it's very important. And traceability, individual traceability, can support collective impact, such the harmonization of global import control schemes. We are hearing now that, especially in Europe with the new catch system, there is misalignment, for example, with your suppliers and the countries where they are operating, Peru, for example, or China or others. So we believe that traceability systems implemented individually can also foster this harmonization of global import schemes that is essential to avoid IUU fishing and human rights abuses in global value chains. The increased transparency to reduce risk in destination markets. So this is something that belongs to the two previous statements, no? So transparency is about knowing the fleets that you are sourcing from, where these fleets are located. I know that under the definition of transparency, there are many different topics, but what we want to see in terms of transparency here is the transparency of this group. As I mentioned, when we relaunched the SR 3 years ago, for example, through the ODP, through our website, through fish shores, but also transparency in the fleets. So we and you know that many customers and many clients, and especially in sectors like tuna, the conversations are already about electronic monitoring, observers on board, data sharing. So this is transparency. There are many other topics around transparency. There is the Charter for Fisheries Transparency that is very, very technically detailed in 10 principles. But when we are talking about transparency, let's try a bit more practical, no? So what is the transparency we aim to achieve for these scientific, regulatory and scientific foundations, and also the harmonization of global import schemes? And then for the group view, no? So that's why there are like 5 bullet points for the view of the point of view of the group. we believe that it is essential to foster the collaborative management, no, to cover major value chains. So the work that we are going to do with all of you, the work that we have been doing. So this collaborative management model implies collective action through individual responsibility. And I believe that this is something that, as Clara mentioned in the last presentation, with the progress and the performance evaluation we did, we have grown, but there is still space to grow still more, and it is important. And then how this group can be can build credibility and legitimacy, and also what is the influence of the SR globally in the decision-making processes, in the governance of the fisheries. So how we can make this group strong, and how we can have more influence and more leverage. The number of the companies today remains small. We are 27 companies, participating companies. We are in conversations with industry groups. We are in conversations with other groups, with other NGOs, with other initiatives. So I can recognize that thanks to also the work and the involvement of the companies today, we have other organizations inviting myself or the industry chairs to speak in public forums. And this is important, okay? It is important because the SR needs to be not only an advocacy group, but to bring the voice to the industry, to the governance of these fisheries. So this is the vision that we have been working together within SFP and with Clara. Thank you, Clara. Clara is now 1 year that she joined SFP and joined all this work. So I want also to recognize her work here in front of all of you, because she has been key in the last year work. Okay, so let's go. So if you have comments or you want to interrupt, this is more or less the structure that I already presented as a preliminary approach, and that I share with the chairs, I share with some of you. So I had some feedback from some of you. Others didn't respond, so I have not seen any specific opposition to this, but basically this is what we want to achieve. How do we structure these expected outcomes in tangible approaches? One is improved global squid governance. Secondly, ensuring these responsible value chains. So these two pillars basically will work together. The first pillar is really about support improvement efforts in regions where there are already RFMOs. So, for example, we continue with the work that we have been doing in the South Pacific RFMO, but we also develop and support proposals for areas that remain unregulated, such the case of the Ilex argentinus. And then it's true that we have been focusing a lot in Dorsodicus gigas and Ilex argentinus in the jumbo squid. So now we have also identified, and there is a full document, very detailed, that I will share with you, but we have also identified like emerging regions, like the North Pacific Fisheries Commission, emerging regions, not because they are new today, but emerging regions in terms of interest from the SAR and priority regions. So how we can replicate part of the work that has been done at the South Pacific RFMO in the North Pacific Fisheries Commission, how we can do that as well in the Northwest Indian Ocean. So we know that the Northwest Indian Ocean is a really special area and region, because it's mainly a Chinese fleet operating there, and we know that the squid harvested there is mainly going to Asian countries. So we know that this is not a priority for you, but who knows when this squid is coming or will start entering, or if it's not already mixed with the products we have. So we are looking into this region from a moral research perspective, and we are trying to raise some information about this region. And then we cannot forget that, as I mentioned before, the international import schemes, the value chains, because in the two first points, we are really speaking about fisheries and authorities, and you will be sometimes very far from there. No, you can. So basically, the work in this pillar will be continue and increasing the advocacy, bringing the industry voice, proposing statements. So it's more about what the Secretariat, what SFP can do to foster change here with your help. When speaking about the second pillar, ensuring responsible value chains, we see that the common point for the two pillars is really the traceability, the end-to-end traceability, because traceability is going to help first industry to understand where the risks are. And also now that the conversations around due diligence are becoming stronger, it is going to support, obviously, the harmonization of international import schemes. We have heard that there are Chinese companies or Peruvian companies or Chilean companies willing to comply with the new system in Europe. So this is more or less, this is the reason why we have identified as a core strategic priority the traceability. And then obviously continue with the improvement efforts, the implementation of FIPS or other initiatives that will impact directly in specific fisheries or supply chains. Okay, so this is more where we will define additional projects or identified specific projects, and we will catalyze work towards these specific goals. I don't want to invest many time in reading, so these are really boring slides. So the typical slides that everyone recommends not to do with a lot of reading. So, and I want to avoid you to be reading while I'm speaking, but I wanted for you to do a summary of the strategy. So you will have a detailed document, really detailed document with a roadmap, a Word document, but this is a summary that you can better read, digest, and ask. Okay, so this is basically what I just explained. What are the goals of the first pillar, the areas of work where SFP is going to implement, and what are the expected actions from the participants. Okay, so basically, this is associated to the first pillar. And as I mentioned, overall, this is continuing with the advocacy that we have been doing and the interventions that we have been doing. One very successful intervention this year, for example, was to bring the voice of the industry into the South Pacific RFMO. It is true that there was not a participant of the SR because it was a short notice that we had, but the Consemar Association participated in the South Pacific RFMO meeting, so it was the first time that we brought the voice of the industry, as it happens regularly in tuna RFMOs, into an RFMO about squid. So these are the kind of actions that we are going to try to incentivize. For the responsible value chains, this is more or less something that will be, we are proposing some actions, but this will be more on construction. No, this is going to be more on track with all of you to identify where are these priority regions that are more or less that are already identified, where we will implement specific projects. Okay, so but basically, we expect that if we know that today the majority of you have sort of commitments, we would like that you will be able at the end of these 3 years as well, a part of the responsible commitments, but also compliance, annual reporting mechanisms. So this is for you. This is not for SFP, no? But how you can be better accountable, how you can be more secure, operating in a more responsible way to also mitigate the risks associated to the operations of your companies or corporations, or in the case of big companies that have subsidiaries as well. How do you can implement all of this? We would like to see that really there are fisheries that are operating in a responsible way, and that we can also move into new things. So this is the case, for example, for the jumbo flying squid. So there has been a lot of effort invested over the last 10 years from SFP, from philanthropic funding, from other groups into the fishery. Now the fishery is into the MSC improvement program. Do we really need to put more effort there, or should we move this part of this effort into other fisheries? So these are some of the questions that we will be discussing over years, but we will propose here some lines of work for the coming years, and obviously this is going to be discussed among all of you. We believe that we can continue with the training and education, developing recommendations for companies for better practices, as we have been doing, adapting and tailoring again to the new challenges that may arise, to the new regulations, and to your own also worries and concerns. Continue developing tools. So we have metrics, we have the ODP, we did this pilot last year along with Whole Chain. So how we can, from SFP, develop new tools. Obviously, we have the from the Secretariat the mandate and the responsibility of the oversight and monitoring the projects, and obviously identifying new fisheries or value chains where we want to participate. So what we expect from companies is continue with this work of developing responsible policies, the adoption of digital traceability and standardization of minimum data requirements. Again, we propose you adopt. This is for you, this is not for us, but obviously if individual companies within a group such the SR don't adopt these traceability basic standards, we cannot pretend that there will be harmonization of import schemes globally speaking. So these are things that individual commitments can foster collective and collective impact. And then the implementation of due diligence protocols. This will in cascade help that your suppliers in other geographies understand the need of implementing responsible practices from social, environmental, and economic point of view. And then active participation and funding of relevant projects in regions and fisheries of interest. And I want to be very clear about this point. The case is, for example, if we launch a FIP. If we launch a FIP, we can, among everyone, decide that SFP funding coming from all the companies can go into the launch or the monitoring or the coordination of a certain project. But once a FIP is launched, there is a responsibility for commitment, and there is a responsibility for engagement from the participant companies in this FIP. So active participation is that we cannot launch a FIP and pretend that the FIP is going to go alone and succeed alone. So this is the case of the Indian FIP, where we are experimenting many challenges, also because of the lack of engagement and participation from the ground companies, not only you. So, and for the funding, the same. We need to establish funding mechanisms that will help maintaining the Squid SR Secretariat and coordination and support from SFP, while if there is a project going on, the projects have their own funding. So this is more or less also a model that we are developing. So for me, what is very important today is this slide, especially to have your feedback after this meeting, after this webinar, because from last year, the traceability pilot and recent conversations, participation in the latest seafood shows, we have seen that traceability is there. So that's why I wanted to call the Squid SR constant project is making traceability the common foundation for market access, enforcement, and responsible trade. Okay, because this is something that we can work with you all, but also we can establish dialogues with authorities, with groups, with other NGOs and regulators, and to see how we can all together and other forums foster this. So these are the primary goals established that are more or less what I've already said. From the SFP side is establishing all these collaboration projects with other stakeholders. But we have drafted 5 questions that are more for you than for me. Okay, so for us is these questions is for you to understand where are the challenges, and responding to these questions, we will be able to tailor better what is needed. So do we need to invest in developing digital traceability system, or do we need to invest more time in data collection because you already have these systems? Where do we need, what are the main concerns or worries that you have that we can transform into or implement or include into the projects that are ongoing today, no? So what I will do probably is put these 5 questions in a survey that you can respond, and we can assess and evaluate. For example, there is within SFP a project today that some of our colleagues are developing in Tuna, where in metrics they can upload vessel information, and we have been in conversations with Global Fishing Watch, and one of the questions that has been proposed from Global Fishing Watch and other groups and our colleagues working in Tuna is that would SR participants be interested in understanding the behavior of the vessels they are sourcing from? So probably yes, but maybe some of you will tell me, I don't know what are the vessels that I'm sourcing from. But would you be interested in having, for example, a list of vessels that we can share in an aggregated manner with Global Fishing Watch, and asking Global Fishing Watch, please, can you assess the risks of these vessels? We have done some tests with that, with this logic, and how we can automatize this. But this is only if you want, because it requires an investment of time, resources, and technology. So if this is something that maybe the worry is about, no, I'm more interested in collecting the data because I don't have the data. I don't have the catch certificates. I have not visibility of my supply chain. So this will help us to see where to put the effort. In the same way that you have been over the last 3 years reporting into metrics, and this has helped us to identify the fisheries where we should put some effort, this will help us to identify where we can put the effort in terms of traceability, where is the basis. No, we know that some of you are much more advanced than others, but the question is what we can find as a solution for everyone, for those that are starting and those that are still not, and for those that are very, very advanced, no? And what are the challenges that you are facing? Because this can be then translated into a statement that we can put in front of authorities or in front of regulators, saying industry has these issues. We would like that you speak to Peruvian authorities to be sure that the catch certificates that Peruvian authorities are exporting are well aligned with the catch system in Europe, or are well aligned with the safety and security requirements in US. No, that's the story behind these questions and behind this construct project, and then ensure that FIPS or any project or any initiative with a fishery includes traceability. Because today we know that we have failed on this. We have focused a lot on the efforts that were needed to improve the fisheries, and we forgot somehow, or we didn't forget, but we prioritized focusing on improvements in the water. So this is important as well. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me or raise your hand, or we will leave also a Q&A time later on. So this is more or less related to the strategy, to what what is expected. So now I will present a specific updates on the projects we are working on and the two major projects that we are looking into for the next coming years. So a review of the jumbo flying squid. So I do apologize because it's true that we sent this letter and I couldn't update accurately on the results of the RFMO. There is a report that my colleague Teddy drafted, but it's true that I had some health issues and I've been on leave more than expected. So it's true that I didn't follow up very well with that, but you will have a report along with this presentation and we will update everything. So basically, there were new conservation management measures approved. The continuing registering artisanal vessels. So this is important, especially for those sourcing from the jumbo flying squid fishery in Peru, because there are some vessels in Peru that are going outside of the 200 miles. And these vessels were not registered at the South Pacific RFMO level. So basically, it was like unregulated fishing. Because if you are a vessel registered in Peru, but you are going out of the economic exclusive zone and out of the area that you are allowed to fish, this could be unregulated. So the artisanal vessel registration has improved. So now there are Peruvian vessels registered at the RFMO level. So their operations out of the economic exclusive zone are regulated. There was an agreement in the fleet reduction, so in the fishing effort, this is good as well, because there was 2 years ago a decision to put the fleet at the levels of 2022, and now the reaction is reducing the fleet operating in the convention area. Obviously, as you can imagine, these conservation management measures have the weaknesses of enforcement and regulation, no? How this is implemented, but at least the conservation management measure is there. The European Union proposed some measures for port inspections, and this was partially adopted. We expect that next year maybe this is going to be all complying. And Korea proposed some specific procedures for data reporting to harmonize all the countries' data reporting. So this has been approved. The bad news is that there is still lack of science-based management. It means that they have not been able to agree on a stock assessment and coordination measures for the management of the squid. So we will keep insisting on this. As I mentioned at the very beginning, in terms of industry voice, that was the first year that the importing industry was represented. And this is important as well because there was a direct interaction in between the industry, in between the European delegates. So this year as well, the European delegates sent me a letter. We have established a communication channel, the same for Peru, along with Calamasur, along with Consemar and Anfaco as well for the first time. So we had other big industry associations such FIAP in France, the similar of Consemar signing into the letter. So this is important because we are generating this voice and this influence. And I believe that we have a solid voice now. The industry is well represented at the RFMO. We still need to push for this science-based management missing piece of work. In Peru, as you know, the FIP is in the MSC improvement project. They hosted a meeting in Barcelona. Unfortunately, there was a private meeting. This is something that I told to MSC, that I thought that this should have been an open meeting where everyone could have participated. Well, the importance is that the overall indicators are good. The overall projects and the work plan seems to be very robust. I have a presentation. I have one of the presentations from the meeting in Barcelona that really shows the strength of the project and the possibility of becoming certified by 2030. But there are still, and this is something that if overall everything is going well, there are still a few things that from our view at SFP and recommendations that we have done to both CAPECAL and also MSC is to address one, the question of the traceability. So the certification, as the unit of certification belongs to CAPECAL, so only companies that are associated to CAPECAL, and they have not included the fleets, no, the small scale vessels. So today they are working towards the full unit of the full fleet in Peru. The problem is that, as I mentioned before, there are vessels in Peru that are fishing outside the 200 miles. So these vessels are not, won't be in the future MSC certified because they are not fishing the certification unit, no? But these are minor things that will be addressed probably in the coming years, but these are some of the recommendations we have done. And there are still social risks, and this is something that the MSC certification is not addressing because it's not the goal of the MSC certification, and also because MSC only works based on evidence and not in risk, despite the salient risks that are identified in public reports related to migrant workers, for example, Venezuelan workers in vessels or others. This, as there is no like strong evidence, this is not a concern for MSC, no? So maybe this is where we could also try to design an action or see how we can support the FIP in Peru. But overall, I believe that now MSC and CAPECAL and the organizations working together in the improvement program are well positioned and to implement the environmental work plan that they need to achieve the certification. But as mentioned, traceability and social risks remain a problem. Finally, in Chile, you remember, this is not new, the prospective FIP that I announced in the previous meeting. Well, as you may have heard, another thing in Peru, sorry, I go a step back. Another thing in Peru is that those that are in touch with Peru, you know that the instability in the government may impact in the fishery as well, okay? Because they want to, there are some proposals at the parliament level to touch at the formalization process, to formalize new vessels. So these are things that the FIP must address as well, and these are risks, for direct risks for the FIP. But this instability is out of our control, and we have seen how globally it's hard to know what's going to happen from one day to another, but we keep an eye on this to see how at some point we could also support with an action, bringing the voice of the industry and supporting the FIP. In the case of Chile, the same, the recent changement in the government put on hold some of the work, but I had a call last Friday to understand in what process they were. So apparently the management committee has strengthened its position. The public-private alliance that they built last year is also working pretty well, and they are hopefully they will meet with MSC, with the Latin American team of MSC in Chile to see how to engage maybe in an MSC improvement program. So I will keep you informed about that. The only risk in Chile, as well as I mentioned in Peru, is that the new government is proposing to resume industrial fishing. So in 2020 or 2021, I guess, there was a specific law to regulate the squid fishery, the jumbo squid fishery, the Hibia, and to limit access only to artisanal vessels. forbidding industrial vessels targeting jumbo squid. And this is important for the environmental conditions of the fishery, for the social component as well of the fleets and the communities belonging to the fishery. So there is a proposal at the parliament as well to resume industrial fishing. So our colleagues in Chile will draft probably a statement or a letter in support of not opening the fishery again to the industrial fishing. So they will keep us informed to see if we can support as well companies that are interested in supporting that this law don't pass or that this proposal stay on hold. You will be informed. Argentine short-fin squid, the second big fishery in the world and really important for us. High seas remains unregulated, as you know, no RFMO in the region, and this is likely not happening in the subcommittee, in the coffee subcommittee happening in Iceland last year. In coffee, they put on the FAO in the coffee list of topics. They put in the radar ILEX, which is important, but apparently not from the perspective of building or creating an RFMO because of the geopolitical challenges in the region. Say that we are working towards having a consensus for a regional stock assessment. And there is a group of scientists that has been working for years now. So if you remember that there has been, informal meetings, and I'm saying informal meetings because authorities or countries were not formally represented. There was only research institute and scientific collaboration. This was the way that we can better initiate this dialogue. So, for example, there were people from the Shanghai University, people from Chile. So there has been some workshops going on. And there is an expected workshop happening in Vigo in September, where we could have the first ILEX stock assessment, regional stock assessment available publicly to then define a management procedure. So this is on track. This is good news because until now we had not like a time-bound or a deadline to have this workshop and this stock assessment. So this is ongoing. So we cross fingers to see this achieved in Vigo. And my goal is probably organizing a side event or a squid event during Consemar, focusing on squid to also raise awareness to target Consemar companies and the international companies to come to contribute to the SR and to contribute to the efforts that we are doing. In terms of Argentina, the 3-year audit is on track. The FIP is progressing pretty well. The traceability report was shared with them, and at a national level, they have taken some notes and the feedback for the new traceability regulations. And the FIP also updated the list of vessels in fishery progress. It's very recent, so if you are sourcing from Argentina and you want to check and you want to do the due diligence, the list of vessels is updated. As you know, in Falkland Islands, there are also a couple of fleets operating under mixed license with Falklands operators. Mostly is Taiwanese vessels and Korean vessels. So we have established a line of collaboration with a Taiwanese organization. Well, not a Taiwanese organization, but an organization called Ocean Outcomes that is collaborating with Korean and Taiwanese fleets. So I'm flying to Taiwan in June to meet with fishing industry from Taiwan and try to define some activities, try to include some of them in the traceability work that we would like to conduct. So it's scoping work, but it's promising because I've been also in touch with the fleets. Pedro Ferreiro, my colleague that many of you knows as well, is also in touch with them. So we are building something. I cannot say yet what is exactly what we are going to be able to achieve, because it's exploratory and scoping work, but is very important for the work that we are conducting around the stock assessment and future management procedure, and also the traceability work that we want to implement. Which has been less promising, unfortunately, is the India. The current Kerala FIP, even though the director of the Seafood Export Association in India contacted me, that was anecdotic, so I sent a letter saying that we were seeking collaboration. My understanding is that they have requested an expansion and of the deadline of the FIP, because they have not been able to achieve the activities, but they have not responded. The offer was to collaborate with them. The offer was to implement some traceability and collaborate in some of the remaining activities that has not been accomplished during the time that the FIP has been working. But a part of acknowledging the reception of the letter, there has not been tangible improvement. So now I'm in touch with a company that is based in Kerala. This company was out of the consortium that the FIP created. So, but he has been able to establish a new channel of communication, and we will see. A part of this, because I see that the Kerala FIP may be very difficult to engage with. As I mentioned in the past, individually you can engage with your suppliers and try to identify who is really supplying from this FIP. But for me, the major issue here is the lack of transparency. Even though fishery progress shows some progress and a score that is more or less that is good, there is a total lack of traceability. We don't understand, we don't know where the landings and where the processing is happening. We don't know if there is any control of the traceability, and sincerely, I've tried very, very hard, and it's very difficult to establish a dialogue with them, and I've not been able to do that. So I'm still positive and with my arms welcoming any feedback they can provide, but in the meantime we cannot await that they react. So I've received conversations. Hi, Penelope. Yes.
Hi. Just curious. Can you remind us what's the biggest barrier to prevent the participant to? Well, first is people on the ground in India to participate, and two, for people already in the FIP, what is really the barriers for them to move forward with their progress?
So there are a couple of things. The first is that, and this is more a technicality of the FIP. This is a multi-species fishery where they are including many species. This is not an industrial or an artisanal fishery, it's something in the middle. So it's a mechanized trawlers that are multi-species, very hard to control, and a very big fleet. And in my view, from my small expertise in FIPs and in this fishery, so I don't want to say that I'm an expert, just with the information I have, it was a very challenging work plan. So targeting MSC certification in this fleet was very, very a very high expectation, because from the very beginning the traceability was weak, the way that they are managing the fishery is weak. So a part of the progress that they can or cannot do in terms of the work plan, of the technical work plan against MSC, that again for me is very ambitious. The second problem is that the way they established the governance of this project was by creating a consortium of companies. So basically closing a group to maintain the market of the FIP. So they don't have participation criteria. I mean, if a company wants to join the FIP, there is no way to do that, because they didn't establish any protocol to accept companies either in India or outside, or foreign companies or importers, because there is not a protocol. They just decided to close the FIP to 20 or 10 companies. I cannot remember the exact number of companies. And they have created a consortium that is closed. So if we go to these kind of models, it creates some barriers for other market players to enter or not. So if you are able to supply from a company that is within the consortium, you will be sourcing from the FIP. But imagine that you have a historic supplier in India that you would like him to source from vessels that are sourcing from the FIP. If he's not part of the consortium, even if he's sourcing from the same vessels, he's going to be out of the FIP. So these are things that we are trying to address with the launch of new FIPs. For example, in Peru, they established Capecal. Capecal was a closed group of companies in Peru, but they have participation criteria. So if someone wants to join Capecal, it should be able for a company in Peru to join Capecal in Peru, which is the chamber of Peruvian processors, So there is some rules of the game. It's like the SR. I could establish a group of SR participants without any participation criteria and say, we don't accept new companies. And this never happened in the Indian FIP. And this FIP is coordinated by WWF. It's not coordinated or was not launched by SFP. So SFP is not the only organization that is in the space of the FIPs. So each organization or each group that launch or initiate a project define the rules for participation. And there are no rules for participation here because they have decided to close this group. So,
it sounds like from your interaction with them so far, it doesn't seem like they're very responsive or willing, really open arms.
I mean, I don't think that is a question of individual. I believe that there may be many different reasons for that. So it's not like they are not responsible. I cannot say that individual companies within this group are not responsible because they may be doing good work. It's just that they have established this system that does not enable anyone to join this group. So I don't know how individual companies are working because I've never been able to participate in a meeting of the FIP, for example. So I want to be clear that I'm not saying that the companies are not responsible of this group, is that the way that the group is established is not following rules where others can participate. And this is this is a lessons learned from FIP. I mean, from many different FIPs, this was a very challenging thing. For example, in Mexico years ago, in a FIP that we ran, the Yucatan Octopus FIP, when we started, there were only 3 companies. And when new companies wanted to join, they were very reluctant to accept them because they didn't know where they were coming from. So there was like long discussions about this. Finally, a group in Mexico was able to establish participation criteria, collaboration. This is something that I insisted a lot when we developed this new phase of the SAR 3 years ago with an MOU with participation criteria. So it's not that companies are not responsible, it's just a group that is close to new participants. And the only public face they have is fishery progress, and it's not enough transparent to ensure what is going on in the FIP. Obviously, the methodology of fishery progress demonstrates that there are some progress, but not what is going on with the companies and the operations. If you recognize, so what I can do is also export the list of the companies, and if you recognize suppliers, and we can also in an individual basis. But again, I don't think that this a behavior that is individually companies doesn't want to collaborate, that this has been an agreement that has been reached among the Seafood Exports Association of Squid exporters. Another thing that I heard from many companies sourcing from India is that the global context has not helped at all. So we know what has happened with the tariffs, exports, the current geopolitical situation in the Middle East. So we cannot blame individual companies for certain behaviors. We know that there are cultural barriers as well when working with them. So we are exploring other ways of working with them. So first, there is a new standard called community catch that is better adapted to the reality of some fisheries. So I had a chat with community catch, with the group of community catch in this is a new standard considering indicators more realistic and better adapted to small scale fisheries. So they are doing like a sort of, they are filtering in the list of fisheries they have if some fisheries in the west coast of India would be eligible for that and what support they could bring. We have a new company very interested in supporting us that has shown a lot of willingness to collaborate. Interseas, they are located in Kerala. I met with him several times, and he is also helping to find a coordinator or to establish some dialogue also with the seafood imports. For example, this is an example of a company that is in Kerala and is out of the FIP and wanted to join the FIP and couldn't. So they are trying not to build a new effort, but he is trying to build bridges. So we are trying to do that. We have identified a couple of new consultants that are on the ground that could help us, because the current consultant that we identified, who is managing this current FIP, she has declined the coordination of a new FIP. So, well, I believe that we have some positive, but I don't want to be very, very optimistic, because it has been 1 year now that we have been pushing for this. But within SFP, we are also exploring how to build a division to develop FIPs and to have a better oversight. So there are few things here that has changed from last year and new approaches that we are taking. So we will see how we can find a region in India to work that can suit and can fulfill expectations of the SR, and how we can challenge as well the Kerala FIP to become more open. So this is what we are doing. And then I'm pending of having a conversation about New Zealand. James, we can talk maybe separately, and because yes, this is really, New Zealand has to stay. We are waiting for feedback and to organize a next meeting to see what is next. If finally the stakeholders in New Zealand that were planning to do some first projects in the fishery has decided what is next, if going into a FIP, or we can update fisheries profiles, or they have a management procedure. So I will update on all of this once I have the information. Today, I don't have this information. And the two projects that are under development, and with that I've almost finished, trying to address this question of the traceability and thinking of a good case for the companies, for you all to participate and to respond as well to the questions that I put in the previous slide, is that in Boston I established a dialogue and a collaboration with Song Ling Wan. Some of you already knows him. He's the CEO of the Qingdao Marine Conservation Society, an NGO that works in China, in Qingdao, with some processors and fisheries in China. Song Ling also has his own consultancy in Hong Kong. As you can imagine, NGOs in China are not always able to work in everything they want. So he has also his own consultancy. So we are speaking about how to involve Chinese suppliers, processors in the work that we are doing in a more friendly approach, because there are obviously culture barriers. The language is already one, the time zone. There is also this question of having your suppliers within the SR, mixing conversations. So the idea is basically engaging Chinese suppliers for them to understand that they must have better information for the companies that don't have today this information, or because we have identified that sometimes lack of the traceability were happening in the mid of the supply chain in this processing and these long supply chains. We want to build trust among a group of Chinese suppliers and processors that can support the goals of the SAR. So, for example, I just want to imagine that at some point, one of the letters that we will send to the South Pacific RFMO can be signed by a Chinese company. I don't know if this is a very ambitious thing, because obviously there are political challenges, and many challenges. But how we can work with them, how we can have an approach that is not now announcing nothing. So it's not from the SAR announcing that we are working with all these companies. No, it's really about a prevention way of working, identifying your Chinese suppliers, and see how we can build a small group of companies in China speaking to Songlin, because Songlin will understand very well the sensitivities and what is needed. Obviously, Chinese companies wants to keep exporting to Europe, and the new traceability system has demonstrated being a challenge for many countries in terms of exports. So the dialogue is oriented to first developing this collaborative framework with Qingdao Marine Conservation Society. So this is more on the SFP side and Songlin side, how we can establish a collaborative framework, an MOU, or maybe an agreement, how to reach an agreement. Then identify a group of SR suppliers interested in future collaboration. And again, this is not going to be public. I don't pretend to make this collaboration or this line of work public, because we know that it can harm, or it cannot achieve the goal of building trust. We know that there are many challenges. We cannot start the conversation by due diligence or social issues. We know that this is a sensitive topic. Obviously, at some point, this must be addressed. But we believe that starting by traceability will help to build consensus on what your suppliers can do, and how we can then indirectly influence rest of Chinese companies or companies that are working with you in an opportunistic way and not regularly. So we are going very slowly to build really an initiative that can generate some impact. There is currently the Conservation Alliance for Seafood Solutions, the CAS. Stefano was there in Boston, has a line of work, a work stream called East Asia Exchange, where Songlin is participating from China, Seafood Legacy from Japan, that we are already in touch with. I'm already traveling to Japan, previous to Taiwan, and Ocean Outcomes from Taiwan and Korea. So there is already a dialogue where we have been speaking with to see how we can bring them to the table of these initiatives and starting speaking by traceability, because this is the main thing, no? You must know where your products are coming from if you want to then jump into the next, that is due diligence. And this is basically what I'm working today. As I mentioned, I'm going to Japan end of May, and from Japan directly traveling to Taiwan to meet with all these stakeholders. In Japan, I just do a break. In Japan, there will be a Squid event. Obviously, the time zone is not fantastic, but apparently it's an hybrid event organized by WWF, where WWF Peru will speak about traceability in Peru, and it's a Squid event that I will share. I'll be sure to share the QR code. So if anyone wants to travel to Japan, take advantage and travel. Otherwise, there will be an hybrid option. And finally, another project that is under development, that this is more for 2026 scoping work to implement in 2027, is responding as well to the questions in the previous slide. How we can work as an organization to really go into this vessel level due diligence and vessel level visibility. in two sense. For your internal purposes, your internal interest and companies' due diligence, but also for transparency, for sector transparency. So the primary goals are here, how you can update or how you can support the sourcing policies, establish vessel level visibility, traceability. How do we, if you remember a couple of years ago, Global Fishing Watch presented their initiative of Vessel Viewer. This is complex because you cannot go with every single vessel and create you a profile in Vessel Viewer and monitor your vessel. So how we can automatize this better? It doesn't mean that you need to do that with every single CAT certificate of vessel, but there is a mechanism where you can randomly audit or control some of the vessels you are sourcing from. So these are the ideas that we are putting into this initiative to see realistically how this can be implemented, because there is no technical solution, there are no easy technical solutions, but these are the two projects under development today that we believe that can be implemented over the next 3 years, obviously along with the FIP in India, and obviously identifying other with the New Zealand as well to understand what happened in New Zealand, continuing with the jumbo squid and the Argentine shortfin squid in this area. So this is more or less how the next 3 years looks like. It's a lot. Even for me, it's a lot, for Clara and myself, and the SFP team that is supporting this. So this is why, and this will be better developed. There are many tools now, especially many people using better tools than this very basic structure of the SR. But basically, what I wanted you to see is that it's not only Clara and myself that are in front of you working here, is that there is the full support unit from SFP, people that are supporting metrics, fishers, ODP, the secretariat, who is the private sector, so mainly you and the governance body within this private sector, within this group, that are the co-chairs that I'm exchanging with them. And I have added another group here that is the external stakeholders, how we are working with them, and also at some point what we can get from them in terms of income, not only funding, but also in terms of in-kind contributions. How can Qingdao Marine Conservation Society or Ocean Outcomes work with us, and how this can contribute to the mission of the SR and to the impact, no? So this is more or less the model that we are trying to define. And this is a challenge because, as I mentioned in the previous meeting, one of the limitations for SFP and the SR today is the lack of funding from philanthropic funds. So there are a lot of numbers here, but I will explain very, very quickly how the funding looks like. Until now, we decided in an annual basis the budget of the SR because we had philanthropic funding secure for myself first, for Clara, and for part of the team of SFP, and this is not longer the case today. So there are many lines of work from philanthropic funding that are not longer here. So we need to shift into a model where we are not depending so much from philanthropic funding, and we need to shift into a model where industry must contribute better. And this is the reason why the 3 years strategy is, because we have secured philanthropic funding for the next 3 years. It's a small amount compared with what we had in the past. So if I do a recap from 2025, just for you to understand where the funding was coming in terms of SR, administration, operations, and core support, more or less the industry funding, considering your contributions and other contributions, were in $50K US. The support for the Indian FIP, this money is still there. It has not been spent. Was agreed was that. The 3 years audit was here, so there was not philanthropic funding for this. the BHR consultants, the consultants that developed the guidance for due diligence, that was in 2024 and 2025. And there was many of my travels, meetings, and other related costs to events that were covered by philanthropic funding. So Fishers as well was mainly funded by philanthropic funding, and the SR has invested a small amount because with the budgets are adjusted at the end of this year, and I relocate funding from philanthropic, and I see internally when in SFP there is funding. So this is the reality. The reality this year is that the operational costs of the SR are estimated in $150,000 US, for meetings and events, 10,000. The fissures and reports, for example, the Latin American report that we have issued, the FIP launch of India and other projects, these are not quantified because we have not decided, but this is the portion that we have for philanthropic funding and the portion that we need to cover the SR funding, no, the industry funding. And what I've done is an estimation for the next 3 years to understand how we can adjust the contribution from the 27 participants that are today into the SR. So we have a balance from 2025 of 52, sorry, because I have these icons from the... So we have a balance from last year, counting with allocations that I've done here and there to be more efficient, of more or less $50,000 US from last year that I just removed from the total funding for the next 3 years. And I just divided into 3 years and 27 participants. So this is the fee to maintain the current work that we would need from the 27 participants today. So as you can see, it's more or less $3,000 US. We consider that we will be able to leverage more funding and to have an external contributors models as well, having others contributing to the mission of SFP, of the SR, of the Squid SR. We have some of the projects that are not quantified here, for example, the stock assessment, the ILEX project, or other projects that are being negotiated now and agreed now. So we believe that a realistic fee to maintain the SR as it is today is increasing the annual fee to $2,500 US for a fixed amount for the 3 years. I know that there is an increase of $1,000 from the annual fee established the first year, but the reality is this is the money available for us to work on all of this. No, again, there will be some additional contributions that are not quantified here because this is ongoing, and this is the reason why I reduced from the specific amount needed to cover this. We also need to consider that we need to maintain the 27 participants. So if there are participants that wants to abandon the SR today, tomorrow, or in 2 years' time, we will see how to readjust everything. We can see which lines of work can be dropped from the strategy. But basically, this is the proposal, no? 3 years strategy, 3 years fixed amount, fixed fee in $2,500 US, considering that everything goes well. And if we have, we are going to try to raise funding to not only to maintain the SR, not to reduce the cost of the fee, of the annual fee, but to be able to establish new projects, new lines of work, or being smart with the tools we are using, or how we can improve, for example, metrics or this vessel identification system and all of this. This is the proposal for this year. And with that, that's the end of the presentation. That was I'm a bit behind of the hour and 15 minutes that I proposed, but obviously if you have questions, comments, or you digest everything, you watch the recording, tomorrow there is another call for the rest of the companies, and we can organize a call for reactions after my trips to Japan and Taiwan, beginning of June, before the summer season, to recap. And in the meantime, you can deliver your feedback individually by email, or obviously now. Okay. I don't know if you see something that is not reasonable, something that you would like to comment. Yes.
Carmen, good afternoon.
Hi, David.
One question regarding the Chinese NGO, okay? Are more focused on processing on land factories, or are also focusing in the fishing companies that are selling the product to the factories that process on land the raw materials?
Thanks, David. That's a good question. First thing is approaching your direct suppliers and initiating the dialogue there, because this is where we can build the trust. I was saying is to access to these big corporation and fishing fleets is difficult, and it's going to be very, very hard for us to really be able for me to establish a dialogue with a fishing company, which is not the case in Taiwan. For example, in Taiwan, we are directly speaking to fishing companies because the fishing companies have licenses with Falkland companies. So, or we are, for example, in touch with the Spanish fishing industry operating in high seas. But accessing to the Chinese fishing industry is going to be very challenging, and we need to be realistic about this. But if we can build some best practices or improve the behavior of some companies that are sourcing from these fleets, and for example, targeting like 2 or 3 companies that may work with same vessels with landing ports. So how do we go down into more specific and detail will be key. But first, I believe that we need to, and Songlin is more working with so Songlin is working with both. In the past, Songlin used to work with the fishery of the Japanese flying squid, and he was coordinating the old FIP. So Songlin may have a direct relationship with some fleets, national fleets, no high seas fleets. Okay. And this is where we can also initiate some discussions.
My question is just to understand if they have already have any relationship with the fishing companies before, I mean.
Again, Songlin probably with the local fisheries, Chinese fisheries operating in Chinese waters.
Okay.
Actually, Stefano knows them as well because he was involved in the FIP. But I know that Songlin, for example, is also in touch with CAPMA, with the big association of processors.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, Penelope.
Just wonder along the same line about the Chinese processor. Is the scope going to fishing companies, Chinese shipping companies and Chinese vessels, or is it including sourcing from outside of China and processing China?
It's both.
Both.
Both is, for example, if you have a supplier, a Chinese company that is supplying ILEX, being sure that the company is identifying well the ILEX if it's from a fishing fleet from Argentina, from Taiwan, because this risk is there. The product is mixed when it arrives to a factory. So at least you have so how we can make them understand that they are also the owners of many data, that is important, because I mean, Chinese company must comply with regulation and with CAT certificates. But a second thing is what is happening when you process the product. Is the product mixed or not? Is the CAT certificate corresponding to the product that they are selling to you? And now that everything is in paper, that there is no digital traceability, it's hard to say that where the product, and especially in super high processed products like Squid. So you all know where are the risks when you buy a product. You may buy the paper with the product, but you don't know if the paper corresponds to the product. So how we can convince them to establish this sort of verification, this sort of, of protocols that can help as well sending messages to the fishing fleets. If you have the processing industry sourcing from many fishing fleets, well, we always say that the processing companies are not responsible, are not involved. There may be companies that are willing to get involved in responsible practices. So this is why it's important to build this trust.
Wondering, I think that's a great initiative. Applause you and your team to kind of lead this job. It's absolutely not easy. Just curious, if we want to participate, is there any way that there is some sort of templates or initial email information that we can more directly share with our processors to kind of distribute a message and see if anyone would be participating? That might be helpful for our conversation with our processors.
So this is part of the conversation with Songlin. What level of involvement companies are able to establish? I don't want to come to them to say, this is the checklist for you to do that. I want to say that, okay, this is the basis. We want to work in traceability. This is what we are aiming to do. We know that they are struggling with traceability because they have many people asking about traceability and they are exporting a lot. So we are trying to establish this collaborative framework. What I would need now is understanding who are the suppliers, the stable suppliers you are sourcing from that would be keen to start collaborating. And from there, and this collaborative framework, maybe also sharing with you certain pieces of information to say what companies would be keen to do or what companies would be prepared to collaborate. Because we cannot, and this is the reason why we will try to be very silent in a private way, to not scare anyone, to not generate, because we know how does it work. But we also know that these companies are in the international seafood trade shows. We know that there is a big pavilion of Chinese companies in Boston, in Barcelona, in Consemar. So if we can establish some sort of communications with some of them, at some point, maybe in 1 year's time, we're able to host a meeting in Chinese in Boston with Chinese processors, informing them about what they could do.
Yeah, I'm not looking for like an introductory. I know there's still a lot of work needs to be carved out by whoever is going to be in that group. I'm just curious for, let's say, if I want to ask my suppliers and say, hey, this initiative available. What are you interested? If you're interested, please contact so-and-so. I'm looking for if there is certain kind of template that I can kind of just utilize rather than try to draft something up from the ground.
It's a bit about both. It's about a bit, listening to them. I will listen to Songlin, but it's also requesting them to do that. I mean, you are the customer. So you are those that can also push them to do that. So it's a bit of, if a mix of everything. To maintain the confidentiality, this is also that I'm also exploring very well the way that we can do that to maintain confidentiality. Maybe the way that we can proceed is in an aggregated matter, taking the name of the companies and share the name of the companies able to or willing to collaborate without disclosing the name of the customer. So you all give me the list of the companies. I give the list of the companies to Songlin, and Songlin contact them, but in a confidential way. I mean, I'm not going to say Cabo Mar has sent me the name of this supplier. Slade Gordon has sent me no. we have this list of companies willing to collaborate. We will tell Songlin these are the companies that are willing to collaborate, but we will never disclose the name of the customers. So we will be very careful with that as well. So that's why it will take time. Clara, maybe you can add something. Thanks.
Yeah, I think maybe just to say, I think it's still very early on in the project. And so we still need to refine some elements. But for you to communicate with your suppliers, I think later on we can send some kind of, once things are more clear, some kind of concept note or something like this that you can share with them, right?
Yeah.
But so far, I think it's a bit early for that. We need to, I don't know how you feel, Carmen.
Yes, no, it's totally that, Clara. Thank you. You have put the words. Yeah, exactly. But we really need to be sure that we have a something that is robust and something that may work. That can work. Not so. Yeah, but my expectations is that why not? Why we are not going to be able to find a company signing a letter or meeting with us in Boston? But I cannot do that within the SR. I cannot put in risk NGOs working in China. I cannot put in risk your companies or companies in China. So we need to be very careful with these initiatives.
Thank you.
And probably I will start speaking again, well, because I'm working with them already, with BHRP and Maria, because they have been involved in sensitive projects, so they can also advise, because I'm already working with them in the octopus value chain, so they may have also some tips that they can provide when engaging with groups where there are sensitive topics involved, so we can have some experts involved as well. To help drafting these guidelines. So related to the budget, it's always a topic. I just would like you to I know that this does not belong to you individually to say, okay, I have the money, I will, but please just consider that this has been established in a 3 years time, considering all the needs to continue supporting the SAR. And we thought that doing for 3 years time would help you as well to have more clarity on what is the next year's incomes expected from the SAR, because until now, yes, all this cooperation and funding available outside is decreasing, and we want to be sure that we can continue with this group. So just consider it, and if any company or any of you feels like we need to review, or we can propose reducing the scope of the work. It's a complicated SR, as there are many fisheries, many value chains, and many challenges. But the expected outcomes are there and are aimed to impact all the squid worldwide. So maybe not specifically one single fishery, but the overall squid market. Okay, so maybe we can finish with the call. We will have another call tomorrow, and we will schedule already a call beginning of June to be sure that I can recap and we can take your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Okay.
Carmen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Stefano.
Bye, David.